Good evening. It is the third day of May 2024. The government has once again postponed the school reopening days due to floods. The flooding situation in the country keeps worsening. What you're seeing right behind me, speaking of floods, this is the much talked about Cyclone Hia. As you can see, the different color bands of the route that it has taken, showing the different speeds at which it is moving at, with yellow indicating that right now it is on its highest speed. And what you're seeing there, the areas in Tanzania, Morogoro, Handeni, Dar es Salaam, are in what is known as the risk curve of the cyclone. We'll be telling you more about that. The president talked about it extensively today on his during his address to the nation. Well, we have a lot lined up for you, but first let's have a look at the highlights. Tonight,
serikali ilisema watu wahame, ikusema watu wabomoe, na ikusema watu wanakuja kutubomolea.
Government begins evacuation of Kenyans living in waterways in Nairobi, even as questions emerge on where they are being moved to.
Sasa mnaambiwa kwamba mpandeni mahali ambayo iko juu. Pandeni mlimani. Mlima iko wapi? Mlima iko wapi?
Parents laud president's order on reopening of schools as teachers say more needs to be done.
Na tangazo la rais la kuhairisha shule, ufunguzi wa shule, basi linakuwa ni tangazo mwafaka kabisa.
And Kenyan scribes celebrate milestones attained towards achieving full press freedom as the best of the best journalists are set to be awarded. Of course, today is the World Press Freedom Day. Happy World Press Freedom Day to all the journalists. We'll be telling you about that celebration in the country in a few. And also tonight on Disruptive Friday, we'll be talking about the intersection of journalism and technology being the World Press Freedom Day. Good evening. My name is Eric Munene. Our sign language interpreter is Catherine Simaloi. To begin, President William Ruto today graced the 20th anniversary for the National Government Constituency Development Fund, calling on members of parliament to expedite the passing of the NADCO recommendations to assist in having the fund be a constitutional provision. From the fund, 1.5 billion shillings is annually dedicated for bursaries that facilitates 1.2 million shillings, or rather 1.2 million needy students. The fund has been hailed as a major contributor to the development paradigm. Have a look.
Ceremony of the 20th anniversary of the National Government Constituency Development Fund, President William Ruto recognized the great achievements of the fund.
The Constituency Development Fund Act of 2003 marked a significant turning point in our approach to development. Drawing lessons from the past, its pioneers recognized that true development begins from the bottom up.
This fund has been hailed as one that has empowered society and changed the lives of Kenyans in all 290 constituencies.
The fund has grown exponentially over the last 20 years, from an initial allocation of 1.2 billion in 2003-2004 financial year, growing to 57.9 billion now, resulting in a cumulative total of 522 billion over the years.
From the funds, the education sector receives 78.2%, which facilitates bursaries for needy students, boasting of sponsoring 1.2 million students annually. Usage of the fund has, however, not been without challenges.
To make CDF a constitutional provision. That way, we will stop, litigants from all manner of games.
The president further calling on Kenyans to not re-elect members of parliament implicated in the misappropriation of the funds.
And I want to say this without fear of any contradiction. Any member of parliament who presides over the misappropriation of CDF or the theft of CDF should never be elected, because it is the ultimate betrayal of the people who elected you.
NGCDF has been funding development activities since 2016 and has been praised for being a major contributor to the development paradigm.
Now, Kenyan journalists have joined the rest of the world in celebrating the World Press Freedom Day under the theme Journalism in the Face of the Environmental Crisis, as they called on Kenyans to protect the environment, as Chichi Josephine now tells us.
Journalists across the country joined with the rest of the world to commemorate World Press Freedom Day, whose focus this year is on journalism in the face of the environmental crisis. In Bungoma County, journalists led by their chairman Eric Lombase mobilized the public for journalism and environmental development to raise awareness of the importance of protecting the environment.
Tunapoangazia swala la mazingira, sisi kama wanahabari tuna lile jukumu tu la kuweza kuhakikisha umma unaweza kufahamu na kuweza tathmini kwa karibu kuhusiana na masuala ya mazingira pale mashinani. Journalists in Busia County organized a peace march in Busia City to the County Commissioner's office, complaining of lack of safety as well as low pay are some of the big challenges they face.
But as much as we talk about environmental justice, let us also talk about financial justice for the journalists, because this has been a very big problem. You find most of the journalists are not paid, but they are doing the donkey work.
We must have free speech, and free speech, of course, must be propagated through the kind of work that you do.
Elsewhere in Turkana County, journalists led by their chairman Emmanuel Cheboit used the opportunity to encourage the public to plant seedlings this season of heavy rain that continues to fall in the country.
Sisi ujumbe wetu kwa wananchi na hata kwa serikali na yeyote yule ambaye yuko anatusikiza kwa siku ya leo, tupande miti.
Sisi kama wanahabari leo tunaambia watu kwamba mambo ya tabia nchi, adhari za tabia nchi ni kweli na ipo.
The Meru Press Club Journalists Union was able to include stakeholders in the environmental sector, deliberating on several methods to deal with climate change.
Tunaangalia jinsi sisi kama wanahabari tunaweza kusaidia ama kufanya kazi na kuandika na kuangazia habari ambazo zitasaidia mazingira yetu.
We should not be asking where is the problem, we should be asking who is the problem. And when we know who is the problem, we will address the issues as should be.
Journalists in Uasin Gishu County joined the Ilula Center for Children Living with Albinism, where they donated food, among other things, and later conducted a tree planting event as part of the media's efforts to support environmental conservation.
Tunafahamu fika sisi kama wanahabari athari ambazo zimetokana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, mfano mafuriko ambayo yapo nchini. Sisi kama wanahabari tuna nafasi ya kuweza kuwatahadharisha wananchi kupitia vyombo vyetu vya habari.
Tunasema asante sana for choosing to have your celebrations here.
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
Back to our top story. Tonight, a section of parents has lauded President William Ruto's directive to suspend the reopening of schools indefinitely owing to the ongoing floods crisis. This, as teachers say, alternative learning methods should be put in place. Roga Eval now reports on a day of circulars from the Ministry of Education and the tight balance the government faces.
Tonight, a bittersweet message for parents who seemed uncertain of the safety of their children who were to resume learning on Monday, a week after the stipulated date in the school calendar. Speaking in State House, Nairobi, President William Ruto said the government had no option but the postponement owing to the fact that not only have many schools received a beating from the floods, but also the fact that many Kenyans who were displaced by the floods are using learning institutions as camps in more than 34 counties.
The Ministry of Education is directed to postpone the dates of reopening of all schools in the country for the second term until further notice.
The announcement by the president was preceded by a circular from the Education Ministry, which had put in place measures in readiness for reopening of schools on Monday, including finding alternative shelter for those camping in schools, sharing of amenities between schools, and for parents to ensure they drop and pick their children from schools.
Transportation has become challenging in many parts of the country due to flooded and damaged roads and bridges and a threat of ravaging rivers and overflowing dams in downstream regions is immense.
But in his address, the president issued directives to stakeholders in the education chain, asking school boards to hold strategy meetings and file reports by Wednesday next week. Regional education offices have also been directed to provide timely updates on the status of damage to school infrastructure. Regional administration officers have been directed to find alternative shelter to those camping in schools. Second-term syllabus could be significantly affected after President William Ruto issued a directive to postpone school opening dates. However, this move has raised concerns among teachers who believe more needs to be done.
Government ought to have learned from that and come up with an elaborate program or elaborate designs of engaging the learners when, as a country, we are faced with a disaster, we are faced with a calamity or a pandemic, as it was in 2019.
Ruga Iwal, TV47.
Well, still on that floods bit, evacuation of flood victims in various areas hit by floods have elicited mixed reactions among leaders, with President William Ruto directing the Interior Ministry to coordinate the relocation and evacuation of the affected members of the public, identification of sites for temporary shelter for displaced persons, and supervise the overall support programs. However, the Azimio Brigade has faulted President William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza government over the government's response on floods and disaster management, as well as response in the whole matter, while Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja insists that those who have been evacuated from various areas that are near rivers will not be allowed back.
With the rise of numbers of deaths in the country following the floods which are caused by heavy rains, a situation which has forced President William Ruto to direct Interior Ministry to lead evacuation process in the country and identify temporary shelter program.
Areas prone to landslides and mudslides in various counties have been identified as high-risk areas from which the adjacent settlements have to be evacuated.
However, Azimio Brigade, led by Raila Odinga, has faulted government response over the flooding menace, with leaders expressing their dissatisfaction on government's directive for Kenyans to move from flooded areas and mapped risk areas.
Hii mvua itaendelea kunyesha, maji itakuwa mingi zaidi, mito zitajaa, lakini hakuna hatua ambao walichukua ya kidharura. Sasa mnaambia kwamba mpandeni mahali ambayo iko juu. Pandeni mlimani. Mlima iko wapi? Mlima iko wapi?
Unajua Ngong, wakati mwingine watu wakipeleka huko mambo yanaenda mbaya. Na huko ni Kajiado. Sasa watu watahama wapi? Lazima watu wasaidiwe hapa mahala walipo.
Kwa hivyo Ruto hakuja tuonyeshe mahali kuna mlima Nairobi, atujengee nyumba huko, sisi wote tutaenda huko, si ndio? Lakini hii mambo ya kuongea tu ati hameni kesho unatuhamisha na nini? Tuende wapi, si ndio?
The government has mapped out of 178 dams and water reservoirs situated within public and private land in 33 counties, which are already and present imminent danger. Already, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja says the evacuation plan has kicked off in various areas in Nairobi City County.
Because of the sheer numbers, you find people saying, "Oh, I feel unsafe, I don't want to move." A time comes when government says, "No, we will tell you whether you move or not. We will take care of your life." That is why when you commit suicide, it's a crime. It's your life, yes, but your life belongs to the government. If you try to take your life away, the government comes in. And so the areas we said we'll evacuate, we're evacuating people, we're moving them out of those places, and we've agreed that they shall not go back.
On Friday, the Kenya Meteorological Services had warned Nairobi County residents of possibility of experiencing intensified rainfall. Elizabeth Motuko, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, county governments have been directed to take part in cushioning victims of floods across the country. In the new raft of directives issued by President William Ruto, Cabinet secretaries will spearhead disaster response and mitigation efforts across the country. Departments and agencies have also been directed to work closely with the National Disaster Operations Center and security agencies to ensure a proper approach to the management of the prevailing crisis.
All cabinet secretaries heeded the call from President William Ruto at State House at a time the country is facing yet another flood crisis that has affected the day-to-day activities of Kenyans. The government has now directed cabinet secretaries to spearhead the process of providing shelter, plus cushioning those affected by floods. Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has been directed to allocate some funds to county government so as to provide basic commodities and at the same time make sure residents of different counties are well prevented from being swept away by floods. This include making sure roads and infrastructure are well constructed, plus repairments done to those roads that were destroyed.
We have also directed the Treasury, working with the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure and our military, to provide resources for roads, bridges, and other travel infrastructure that has been destroyed by the roads, by the floods. And we have asked Treasury to work with the resources they have, engage with development partners, and we are also encouraging the private sector to step forward.
However, the president did not clearly indicate how much should be allocated to cushion those affected. It should be noted that a few months ago, there was a clash between the county government and the national government on who should manage disaster response. The Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, through the National Cereals and Produce Board, has been directed to make available food supplies in government stores to support this effort. County Government Security Committee have been directed to report cases emanating from the effects of floods. The Kenya Defence Forces plus the police officers have been directed to provide support in the evacuation process.
Settlements in riparian reserves have complicated the response efforts and compounded and aggravated the risk to human life, safety, and property destruction. The Ministry of Interior is hereby directed to enforce the relocation notices issued earlier upon their expiry at 6:30 p.m. today.
The government has called upon the public to respect and adhere to safety alerts and interventions, and to cease and desist from risking their lives or the lives of others by daring the force of nature. Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
Well, time now for a very short break at 15 minutes past the hour, but don't go away because we'll be back with much more.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus niko niwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue. Mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Now, Mukuru-kwa-Ruben residents who are living near the riverbanks will now have to spend the night out in the cold following the government's forceful evacuation and demolition of houses. Now, the residents are also accusing the government for not issuing a long notice. Our reporter Nelson Moreza spent his day in Mukuru-kwa-Ruben, and here is his report.
This is the exact picture you'll encounter when visiting Mukuru-kwa-Ruben. Residents trying to salvage what is left of their homes following the mandatory evacuation of people living in waterways.
Hapa ndio nilikuwa nimefungua biashara. Sasa tumepomolewa. Sasa hatujui tutaanzia wapi, serikali inaweza tusaidia aje.
The demolition has now left many residents confused and stranded, especially those living near the riverbanks, not knowing the next step to take.
Serikali ilisema watu wahame, ikusema watu wabomoe, na ikusema watu wanakuja kutubomolea.
ilisema kwanza tuhame for our safety. Sasa lakini tumeshangaa, tumeona tuma bulldozer hapa zimekuja kino time. Unaona?
This demolition follows the government order this week asking residents to evacuate themselves, especially those living in flood risk areas, a situation which has left many residents at a crossroad.
Saizi tumeshindwa tutaenda wapi? Saizi kumebomolewa kila pahali. Simi mwenyewe sina kazi, niko na watoto, nimeshindwa vitu nitapeleka wapi? Saizi hata unga nilikuwa nayo kwa nyumba saizi imeendwa na maji, watu wamekuja tu from nowhere kutoka juzi, tumekuwa tukiambiwa tu 30 meter. Na sisi wenyewe tulikuwa mbali na mto, tukadhani maybe hatutabomolewa.
Businessmen are now estimating losses through destruction of property while blaming the government for not issuing a long-term notice for them to move, a situation which has subjected them to a dire situation.
Kwa sasa kama hapa kwangu ndio kulikuwa biashara na ndio makao yangu ndio kila kitu. Sikuwa na mahali pengine pa kwenda. Sasa ni kwenda kutafuta kwa kuweka vitu. Muda umekuwa mfupi sana. Vitu zangu mingi zimeharibiwa kama hizi hapa hivi. Zingine hata zenye nimepeana ziende sijui kama nitazipata zikiwa safe, njoo ninapeana niwekewe. Na wenye wananiwekea hata siwaamini, ni ile tu unatoa zisiharibiwe na tingatinga.
A few meters from here, we arrive at Mukuru Kwarube Secondary School, where residents have queued eagerly waiting to receive relief food, which was distributed by political leaders to those affected by floods.
These are the exact picture you'll encounter when visiting Mukuru Kwaruben. Residents are now counting losses following yesterday's and today's demolition, while others are trying to salvage what is left for them. Nelson Mwareza, TV47, Nairobi.
Well, thank you for that, Nelson Mwareza. Now, a cautious eye is now being cast on the coastal region of the country after President William Ruto announced that Cyclone Hia could hit the country, bringing heavy rainfall and strong winds. Precaution is being taken in various counties along the coast, with Lamu Governor Issa Timami meeting with various stakeholders such as the Red Cross to put in place measures before the cyclone hits the coast. Kisewa Emory with the details.
The weather in the coastal region is expected to get significantly worse. Even before the reports emerged that Cyclone Hia could hit the coastal region, the coast was the only region in the country where the peak of rainfall was to be this month, with every other region already experiencing their peak. Reports turned credible after President William Ruto announced that Cyclone Hia could hit the coast this weekend.
The Meteorological Department and the IGAD Climate Prediction Application Center have issued a stark warning. Kenya may face its first ever cyclone. This cyclone, named Hidaya, could hit any time and is predicted to cause torrential rain, strong winds, and powerful and dangerous waves, which could potentially disrupt marine activities in the Indian Ocean and settlement along the Kenyan coast.
The cyclone, coming from the island country of Comoros, is expected to hit one of Tanzania's cities, Dar es Salaam, and is set to bring huge waves, heavy rains, and strong winds. The governor of Lamu County, Issa Timami, announced that activities in the Indian Ocean would be halted for the safety of citizens from 4 p.m. Friday all the way to Tuesday after emergency meetings with other leaders in the county.
Tumewaambia Coast Guard kuwa enforce hiyo sheria ili tulinde usalama wa watu wetu. Kwa hivyo kuanzia leo saa 10 hakutaruhusiwa safari za kuelekea visiwani.
Residents in the area who depend on the ocean for a living are not too happy with the situation.
Imetuathiri sana kibiashara kwa sababu kuna leo, kesho na kesho kutwa kama siku 3 zilivyotangazwa. Hatuna kazi.
Kenyans living in the coast have been advised to be wary during this tumultuous time, even as the rains continue pounding on other areas in the country. Kisewa Emory, TV47.
Well, the ongoing heavy rainfall has caused flooding with massive destruction in the country, having rendered homeless more than 100,000 people and others missing. The floods have also claimed the lives of many. Now, following the weatherman's updates, the situation seems to worsen daily, leaving the nation in a somber mood. Have a look.
The rain started as a blessing. Now they call it a curse, having ravaged parts of the country for days, leaving thousands of people homeless, others having sleepless nights, hoping that the raging rains will not swipe away their homes.
Maji imebeba mataraja yote kuanzia Kitela, Kondavilet, yote mpaka Yogot. Lakini mahali tunategemea ni hapa mahali pamoja. Serikali mtusaidie kutuundia.
The heavy rains have caused extensive damage to roads, bridge and infrastructures. Regrettably, our dams designed to control flow of flood waters have been implicated in making the floods worse. For instance, the Mai Mahiu flash floods posed by the old Kijabe seasonal dam, and there are possibilities that more dams will spill following the heavy rainfall like in the western region.
Project ya zamani, dam kubwa ya zamani, na imeanza kuonyesha ishara ya kwamba kuna uwezekano ikiwa mvua itaendelea zaidi, kuna uwezekano kwamba pia inaweza kuleta madhara.
The flash floods are also likely to cause more landslides in steeply sloping areas like Chamena Ward, where residents live in fear following the heavy rainfall.
Amkia mshangao wa mporomoko wa ardhi hapa, na inaendelea kutetemeka na bado inaendelea kuporomoka. Sasa tunahofia sana itafuata sasa sahi.
The entire country has now come to a halt as individuals find themselves with no destination, despite the government issuing evacuation notices to residents living to areas prone to flooding.
Fika pia ione hali halisi vile iko, na waje tu kuambia watu hameni, wahame waende wapi? Wahame waende wapi? Hata wakihama wahame njaa. Kwa hivyo serikali, wacha serikali behave, let the government behave like a government.
Anastasia Mkabi, TV47.
Now, Naivas Supermarket has made a donation of essential food items to support the ongoing flood relief efforts. The support is being channeled through the Kenya Red Cross, who have been in the forefront of flood relief efforts. Naivas has donated 4,500 care packs comprising of assorted food items, including cooking oil, flour, rice, and salt. The value of the donation is 5 million shillings.
Unajua news inakuanga na siku moja mbili.
Welcome now to the world of sports. The 2024 Europe Day Kenya Football Tournament heads to Kilifi County this weekend. Under the 18 boys and girls competition has attracted 16 teams which will battle for the second slots, or rather the 2 slots, to play in the finals on the 17th of May at Ulinzi Sports Complex. The Saturday and Sunday action, which is sponsored by German government, will be held at Malindi High School. Tony Polanda has the preview of the matches.
Team, yes we can! Team, yes we can!
16 teams will this weekend battle for the 2 available slots to represent Kilifi County in the grand finals of the 2024 Europe Day Kenya Football Tournament. The under-18 boys and girls squads will take on each other at Malindi High School in the German-sponsored tournament. The matches will be played on Saturday and Sunday, with all the teams being fully kitted besides receiving football equipment from the European Union delegation to Kenya.
We want to make this a standard feature in the sports agenda of Kenya. I just need to find the money so we can extend it to all 47 counties. This year we had to limit it to 4.
The boys category comprises of Vitengeni Baptist, Malindi High, Kizurini High, Kajiwe High, Musumarini High, Mwarakaya, Galana High and Mukongani.
We try to offer some kind of an activity
that creates an empowerment opportunities for them, that creates some opportunities to pursue their dreams. And we believe that sport is the right way to go, and that's where this idea of the Europe Day football tournament came about.
The girls' teams include Mkongani, Mwangea, Viambari, Ngombeni, St. John's, Mtepeni, Kakoneni and Kambeni. This is the third county in Kenya hosting this inaugural tournament after Homa Bay and Marsabit. After Kilifi, the event will be held in Nairobi before the grand finale on May 17th at Ulinzi Sports Complex. The overall top teams will fly to Romania for a training camp with their national teams, while runners-up will receive